Hello, good evening, and welcome to African Voices with me, Baillor Jalloh. My guest tonight is Mendford Tapudzai, who is one of the very few African farmers in South Yorkshire. Hi, Mendford.
Hi, Bailey, you all right?
Yes, I am good. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good
Right.
to see you.
Good seeing you as well. Welcome to African Voices platform. As I mentioned at the beginning, you are a farmer and also one of the very few African farmers in Sheffield or South Yorkshire, indeed. So let's start by you telling me, what do you do?
Right. So what we do, we grow mainly subtropical crops for the niche market. So in our case, we are growing mainly white maize, pumpkins, other fresh vegetables like rape, white stock spinach, mustard. We also have some kale. We are trialing what we call a winter cabbage and some sweet sorghum. Hopefully, much more to come in the next coming years.
Yeah, sure, hopefully. So
Yes.
How did you get into farming?
If you want an honest answer, I'll tell you.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I used to be a very keen footballer. Not very good, very keen. So my knee gave up on me and I found myself with a lot of time to spare. And I've always done farming from back home. And I was doing farming at a smaller scale then. But then when I found myself with this, kind of time, I said, okay, you know what, maybe it's time for me to start developing that idea that I always had to step up and farm at a larger scale for the Afro, Caribbean, Asian market.
Right. So you are the owner of Moyo Fresh Farm Supplies in Sheffield. And so we know that the pandemic has affected so many businesses by putting many businesses into administration or due to the first wave of the lockdown and also the second wave of the lockdown. So I just wanted for you to explain to our viewers or our listeners who will be watching you on TV or maybe on radio, who will be listening to you on radio as well. How has the pandemic affected your businesses, be it in a positive way or negative?
I think overall, I would say the pandemic has come to us at a good time and it has positively affected us in that I don't even know how I would have managed because when I started, I did not have the time to commit to the farm. I was still working full time and without the pandemic or without working from home where I could flexibly work around my, around my commitments, I would not have been able to do it. But also on the other side, I would say when the lockdown initially came in, I was propagating my plants, and I don't live at the farm. So I needed to travel to and fro to the farm. And I nearly lost quite a few plants there. I had to seek some special clearance for me to be able to travel, without any delays to attend to the farm, to the farm. And then for now, I think the later stage of the farming, where I needed to be selling the produce, it was quite tricky because yes, the farm is big. We could do a lot of social distancing. It's in an open place and all those things, but also the added challenges of managing the traffic at the farm or getting the produce to the people in a safe manner without compromising the health of the public or the health of us and the staff was the key thing. So, but overall, I would say the lockdown has worked very well for us.
Oh, that's pretty good to hear, at least a good news for some businesses, as we know that so many businesses have gone into administration due to the pandemic and many people also losing their jobs. So from my understanding, this is a family business. So what's the vision here?
So it's a family business, yes, but it has whetted our appetite. We have seen the potential and we want to exploit that. And we think we've got no choice now but to expand to respond to the overwhelming demand, you know, and interest that people have expressed. I think I should say to you that when we started, we thought we are only a small family-run farm. We are going to be serving people in Sheffield. I think the furthest I was thinking was Leeds or maybe Bradford and all those things. But I found myself sending parcels to Isle of Man, to Ireland, London, you know, all over England. So that's how the idea, which started as a very small idea, quickly expanded into something that we never imagined.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting to know. So we know that there are so many African Caribbeans living in the UK or in England or even in this Sheffield locally, but very few will be doing what you are doing here. So in terms of targeting the niche market out there, how did you start it all?
So, you know, the funny thing is, it started from the back of, you know, the back garden in my house. So I grew a few plants in there. And I think initially it was sweet corn and some few vegetables. And they did very well. And then the next year I said, you know what, let's try it a slightly bigger scale. And a friend of mine who had an allotment was very kind and gave me a small piece in his allotment. And when I was able to reproduce the same thing in the allotment, immediately I could see the potential that we could grow something that was not found locally and supply the niche market.
So in terms of the market, I know you mentioned earlier that you are now even exporting in various countries, including the Isles of Man and many parts across the country. So are you also collaborating with other local traders to see how you can work together so that your product will be locally produced and also locally consumed?
Yeah, I think the main thing for me this year was I was trying to build and protect a brand. So part of that meant that I was trying to eliminate as much as I could any third parties, because I felt like we are at a very sensitive stage where people need to get what we are producing without any interruptions or delays or any problems, and then we can have that interface with the customer. So we are looking at supplying to wholesalers locally and in other towns as well in the coming years. But I think it was vitally important for us at the beginning to build the brand and then to make sure that whatever the customer received, it was something that came from us, that we could identify with, that we know that it was not interfered with. So it was very important for us to manage that transition and to you know, take those baby steps.
For the interest of our viewers or listeners, speaking of challenges, as a business, when you started, what are some of the challenges that you faced?
You know, the biggest challenge that I faced for me was before I even started growing the plants. Because as soon as I said I wanted to expand, I needed to find a piece of land to be able to express myself on that piece of land. And I can tell you now that I've been looking for that land for the past 3-4 years. And it's only last year that we were able to make the breakthrough. So it was not easy for us to find the land, for us to be able to put the ideas into reality. So that was the main challenge. And then the second challenge for us was that, of course, I had done this repeatedly at a smaller scale for a few years, but it was nothing. The method I was using then at a smaller scale and the method I needed to use at a larger scale were quite different. So it was about how am I going to reproduce the same formula that I was using at a smaller scale to make it a success at a larger scale. So that was another challenge, which is why this year was a very important year for us in terms of just taking the lessons.
So it looks like taking longer for you to find the land was kind of like a blessing. But before I come to that, I'm just wondering, why was finding the land so difficult?
Right. I won't go into the politics of finding land.
That's where I want to go. Because some of our listeners or our viewers will be wondering, as I mentioned, there are so many Africans or African Caribbeans living in Sheffield or South Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So we are a very big community.
Yeah.
We eat a variety, you know, various types of food, of African food or African Caribbean food, but not many Africans or African Caribbeans do produce this food. We have to rely for the food to be imported from Africa or the Caribbean countries, which many of us could do the project that you are doing here. So that's the reason why I'm asking, why was finding the land difficult, or what kind of tips now you can give to other people that will be thinking of getting into the same kind of things that you are doing?
You know, sometimes when you've got an idea that is quite remote, that is abstract to people that are that own the means of production, and they're trying to explain that idea to you know, you can easily forgive them for not understanding where you're coming from and where you're trying to go. And then secondly, we are talking of people who have got the land, who don't necessarily need the money. So they are not in a rush to either sell or lease their land. They can manage to keep their land fallow for years and years and years. And then there was also the added challenge. You know, we're in Sheffield city center. And if you want to find arable land around the center, it's difficult. But if you are willing to go maybe further inland, which is away now from your customer base, yeah. And also we are talking about people keeping horses. You know, I don't know whether you know that there's so many people keeping horses these days.
Yeah, sure.
So it means that people who keep horses, they tend to be rich, by the way, and they can offer farmers quite a high amount of money to either buy or lease the land. So it doesn't make sense for a farmer to let go of their land for much less than they would get if they were to go in another direction. And then we're also talking about most of the arable land falls in the green belt. So farmers are crossing their fingers all the time, hoping that one day the government will come and say, right, that land which was valued at £40,000 per acre is now 3 million because they want to build houses. So they would rather keep the land than lease it or than sell it. So it was a big hurdle. It was a big hurdle. And at some point I was thinking, maybe just give up. You won't find the land. But, you know, you keep pushing. And I went to some extent.
And how long did this go for? How long have you been?
Like I said, 3 years. 3 years. I even, you know, took some unprecedented steps, you know, even going to the local MP and say, look, I'm desperately looking for land here. Where can I find land? And then they're thinking, you know, yeah, I know that you're part of my constituency, but that's not what we do, you know. We can't help you.
Sorry to interrupt you there. So speaking of you going to your local MP or in terms of the government, I'm just wondering, is there anything that you think the local authority could do or can do to help people that have got these kind of ideas that can benefit the community or that can benefit the city as a whole? Because producing food is very important. We've seen, you know, this pandemic has kind of highlighted how vital, how important food is to people. So is there anything that the council or the government should do in order to make some of these challenges to be easier for people to access land?
That's what I was hoping. That was, you know, I was hoping for that, because for me, I can tell you that I didn't leave any stone unturned. So I went to the local MP, I went to the council, I went everywhere to make some noise and hoping that somebody somewhere will listen to me. But then it's a private matter in terms of it's a private enterprise. So they were saying, if you want land, you just go through the normal channels, you go online, and if you go online, not many farmers are advertising for their land online. So you won't find any, you know. And then if you bid, the bidding process, sometimes not sometimes, but most of the times when you're starting a business, you're limited by the finances or what you can commit to it. So it was almost like an impossible task to find the land. And then the local authority, what I later on found out was that, of course, they do have some pieces of land, but they've leased them out, and they've given people like 99-year leases, you know. So to wait for that land to become available, you're waiting generations there. So
and I believe most of the farmers as well are overwhelmingly white people or rich white people. So you as an African, as a Black person, as an ethnic minority, as a working class family, if I'm allowed to say that now, because you are a farm owner now, so I doubt if you do fall into that category now. I believe maybe you were, it was going to be an uphill battle for you.
In fact, I was trying to avoid that topic in terms of I was trying to ignore the you know, the color of the skin, and because what you realize is that I went to an auction, for example, one time. It was overwhelmingly white, and I was the only Black person there. And even, you know, how can I put this across? People need to know you, to trust you, you know, for them to be able to deal or to work with you. So you're coming from an unknown background. You're almost like an intruder. They don't even trust your intentions, I guess. Yeah, and you would forgive them for not believing in your idea, and then there you are telling people that I want to grow maize in Sheffield, when if you look at the map of the UK, the agricultural map, they will tell you that you don't grow maize north of Nottingham. You see, so all odds were stacked against me, and then people didn't believe in the idea, and you know, but then it only takes one person who listens, and you know.
Right. So speaking of that though, how did you adopt into growing maize into this part of the world? As you said, you know, it is uncommon here. So yeah, how have you adopted? What were the steps that you took to make it successful?
Yeah, so like I said, it was an obsession. It was almost like an obsession where you're obsessively looking at ways of making it happen. And I would call it precision farming, where every date or every day matters. You miss that at the beginning of the growing season, you pay for it at the end of it. Yeah, because I think for 2 years I was growing maize, and the frost would come when they were just about to start forming grains. So I lost quite a bit before I got the formula right. So it was about reading, researching, and also just finding out yourself, because it was not public knowledge. It was not supposed to, it's not like you could go to a bookshop and buy a book about growing maize in Sheffield, because there isn't. They don't expect people to do that. And then I also found out that it was almost like a closed community farming, where people are not very willing or not very keen to share what they know.
So, yes. So now that you have found out the formula, now you know all those little tricks, if I'm allowed to say it, in how to grow the kind of tropical food that you want to grow. So what are you looking at to be specializing on? Or have you kind of now choose what you're going to be specialized at? Or you're looking at still producing various types of African food?
I think what has given me so much pleasure this past year has been to see the happiness on people's faces when they saw that these things were organic, fresh, and you know, the nostalgia, you know, associated with that. So what I'm planning to do now, I'll continue to maintain the lines that I've been growing, the maize, the pumpkins, the rape, but also on top of that, there are some requests that people are putting forward, you know, like my friends from Zambia, they are desperately asking for sugar beans, you know. Then I've got my friends from the DRC, Congo, they're desperately asking for, what do you call it? You know, sweet potato leaves and all those things. So I'm trying to expand, to keep expanding and listening to people, to what they want, and, you know, continue to improve and provide a good service to them.
Sure, wonderful. Speaking of sweet potato leaves, I'm guessing that will be in high demand as well. Me being from West Africa, originally from Sierra Leone, Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria, those areas.
Yes.
You know, that is a staple food for us as well as cassava leaf. I don't know if you are aware of that. That's why I said there is a huge African community in Sheffield, but we all rely on the food being imported from West Africa or other places in Africa. So it would be nice to know that, you know, there are people like you who are producing local produced foods. But having said that, I'm just wondering now, you know, you mentioned the pandemic has been like a blessing for you. That has kind of boosted your business. It has excelled. So after the pandemic, where do you see yourself? Do you see the demand continuing, or what's the future like?
I think if I'm to go by the response that I'm getting from people that I've been dealing with for the last 6 months, the future looks very promising. And I think the pressure is on me now to either maintain or improve the standards. Because one thing I want people to come to me, not because I'm an African brother who is trying to hustle. I want them to come to me because apart from being an African brother, I'm also meeting their quality demands. Yes. So for me, I think there's a certain level that I was able to reach this year that I hope to maintain. And then there were a few learning points that came along the way, which I'm hoping that as we enter the next year, we should improve, and we will improve, and we'll give a better service.
So is there a prospect of this expanding into a very larger scale where maybe some African brothers or people who are interested in learning new things or interested in farming, so that they can get new ideas from you, or they can get closer to see how they can collaborate, or if they want to invest?
Most definitely. I think for me, I value the concept of sharing. And we've done what we're doing openly, transparently. And all people know that I've invited people to my farm all the time at critical stages. So it's not like we're trying to hide this idea from people to say, look, we want to keep it in-house. We know that it's the kind of work that even if you wanted to do it, but if you lack the necessary passion and commitment, you may not be able to do it, because it's quite hard. It's not easy to do farming, you know, and let alone the kind of farming we do, which is not entirely mechanical. Some of it has to be done manually, you know, by the nature of what we do. So we're quite happy to open our farm to people to come and learn, you know, come in, you know, observe, and we are fine with that. We are fine with that. And the more, the merrier.
So where is this farm based? And at the moment, how many, I know your family is all involved. So at the moment, is it still just within the family?
We have employed 1 or 2 people along the way, because there was a time it was quite overwhelming. We could not cope on our own, but we want to keep that, you know, that family run business going. But obviously we have to balance it with the demand that we're getting. So it's inevitable that we have to expand. And yeah, so currently we have 2 farms, and we are looking at getting even more land to sort of continue to express ourselves.
So now that you know the tricks, or now you are part of the in-house business of land owners or people who can lease lands, do you think now it will be easier now that you know, or you are part of the business, people see you as part of them? It will be easier for you in order to get more land, or you think the challenges will still be there?
I think it's becoming easier, because I'm now carrying some bit of reputation. So if I'm coming to you and saying, oh, I've got this idea, people are bound to listen, because you're saying, I'm not only talking about it, I'm also talking about something I'm doing or I've done. So people are keen to know. What I've seen, I think people they've got values. They do not just want to give you land, then see that land being wasted. I think that's one thing I observed as well. So their key reason probably for saying no in the beginning was because they doubted their ability. That, oh, if we give this guy land, is he going to use it well? Is he going to look after the soil okay? How much does he know about farming anyway? You see? So now that we've demonstrated beyond any doubt that we know what we're talking about, we are actually having offers, people coming to us asking whether we want more land or not.
It's like now from you looking for them, it's now people coming to you.
So that's the refreshing and rewarding part of it, where you put in the shift, a lot of hard work into breaking through. I think in psychology they call it foot in the door or something like that. And once your foot is in the door, then opportunities, they keep coming to you. They keep coming. They will come to you.
I just want us to talk about the financial part of it here a little bit as well, because I believe before you start the farming, as you mentioned, you will have to lease the land or you will have to buy the land, and the money part of it. How did you find the money part of it? Like whether did you take a loan from a bank, or you were well enough to be able to physically finance it yourself?
Getting money from the bank, I think it's easier to squeeze some water from a rock than to get money from the bank, because the hurdles they were asking me to jump on, doing business planning, and when you do the business planning, the amount of depth that they wanted you to go into, and the projections and this and that and so forth, it almost became a massively academic exercise, where if you don't know the right people who can give you the right ideas, you are less likely to even get a loan, to get a good enough business plan to get the money from the bank. And also, I went to the banks, I went to quite a few banks to say, this is the idea. But you're trying to tell somebody who does not even know that pumpkin leaves can be eaten, that I'll make money from these leaves. So the idea was too remote for them to even understand it. Yes. So they wanted me to go there and say, I'm gonna grow some barley and then I'll sell to some big wholesale, maybe they would understand me better if I said that. Yeah. But for me to say, no, I've got a good enough market, I've got good enough skills, I've got a vision. It was almost, it fell out of, what's the word? It was not orthodox. And people are quite quick to dismiss ideas that are a bit foreign or out of the normal.
So speaking of that though, the awareness here seems to be the problem. What do you think us as Africans or us as Black people needs to do in order to raise awareness about the type of food we eat, or our own type of food? Because if you look at it, for example, if you work around town or wherever you go across the country, you can see like a Chinese restaurant, you can see an Indian restaurant, a Pakistani restaurant, Arab restaurant, but it is very rare for you to see an African restaurant. And we've got various types of food from Africa that are pretty good out there. And we've got various types of food, tropical food that originated from African countries. So what do you think here, us as Africans, that needs to do? Because like I said, in Sheffield here, for example, the Baillor community, the Black and ethnic minority communities are up to like 20%. And now in the last 15 to 20 years, there are so many Black people of African origin and African Caribbean origins here. And there is the need for our food to be recognized, I guess.
Yeah, but again, I think the first thing I should say thank you to you, because what you're doing now is the first step towards spreading the awareness. We tried to seek some audience with the Sheffield staff, for example, but our story was not good enough. Was not good enough. So I think we lack the influence at the top. Let's say in a bank, let's say, yeah, if I'm the bank manager and I'm aware of the diversity of food, or what other people do and this and that, and I have to make a decision about a loan, I can go with my knowledge and instinct and say, okay, you know what, I know what this guy is talking about. But then you're talking to somebody who only knows, let's say, their own food, and they are supposed to make a decision about you in this foreign idea that you're proposing. So I think we'll continue to make inroads if we get more brothers in influential positions, you know, at decision-making level. And also what we're doing now people can see that, okay, it's possible. They will see and they will believe. But before they see and before they believe, it's almost impossible to break through.
And the other question I also wanted to ask you is this. If you look at the African foods, most of the time you find them in Asian shops, i.e. Pakistani shops or Indian shops, you name them, or Arab shops. No problem with that. I'm not saying there is any problem to that.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering why us as Africans is very difficult for us to break through into creating these kind of businesses where we'll be able to sell our own foods as well.
Can I ask you something?
I'm listening.
Are you willing to trust an African brother to deliver a service to you?
Why not?
Because why I'm saying that is because in doing this over the last few months, what I've seen is some of the questions that people ask me when they come to the farm. You know, I've had people come to the farm, see me harvest their maize 2 seconds ago. And when I bring the it to them, they cannot believe that one of their own is doing it. And then they ask me, is that maize fresh? Yeah. And then I've got people coming to buy from me. Or are these pumpkins nice? But these are the same people who are willing to take a risk, walk into Aldi, walk into an Asian shop and buy a pumpkin that they don't even know where it was grown. And they are willing to give their absolute faith on that product. But when it comes to one of their own, it's almost like they're in disbelief.
So for you, you think the lack of trust among ourselves and the lack of unity is the key problem here?
So I think we need to learn to support each other. To be fair, you know, it would be unfair if I just put this as a criticism, because I've had a lot of wonderful, you know, brothers and sisters who have come outpouring support, unconditional support, feedback, constructive feedback, and this and that. But also the tendency that I see in the interface is that it's almost like they're in disbelief that whatever you're doing should be of a lesser quality. So they are coming to you almost from a point of wanting to find a fault in what you're doing. So I think it's a challenge to us to say, if I see you doing something, I should start from a point of believing that, you know what, this guy maybe he knows what he's doing. But then what I see is that people look at you, they think, it's almost like you have to pass their test.
And now that you've started this, and this is getting successful, and we hope that it continues to become successful, do you see yourself as a role model for the younger generation or for other people in the future?
If I become a role model, it will be purely coincidental. But for me, I think what's more important is that I want to continue to do as well as I can in what I'm doing, so that people who look from the outside in can see the possibilities, you know, to say, yes, we can do this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And why do you think as well, many of us as Africans are sometimes reluctant into getting to the type of work you are doing, i.e. farming? Do you think it's because of some of the challenges that you faced yourself at the beginning, or maybe sometimes it's due to what you referred at earlier as you don't want to get into the political part of it?
I think I wouldn't say I know the answer to that, but I think it goes back to almost like the re-education of people.
The reason why I'm asking this question is because us as Africans, many of our forefathers, you know, used to do farming, and we are very knowledgeable in farming. But then when we come into this country, or for those of us who find ourselves into these countries, now we are just relying on what is produced by someone else.
I think for me, I've thought about that as well. And we've become so removed from the means of production. And I've said before that I feel like we were sold almost like a lie in terms of what we needed to focus on back home from the education system. You know, it was more fashionable to tell people that I'm doing maths, I'm doing physics, I'm doing chemistry. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are seen doing carpentry, or if you are seen doing agriculture, or even fashion and fabrics. I remember when I was doing my first year in secondary school, I wanted to do fashion and fabrics, but I was the only boy in the school who wanted to do that. And the amount of abuse I got, I ended up stopping.
That killed your dream.
Not that I was going to be a good fashionista or whatever it is. I don't think so. I don't think so. But I'm just thinking that the labels that we attach to certain trades growing up, especially in Africa, you know, being hands-on was never something to aspire for. It was about academics. You know, even as a parent, if your child comes back to you one day and said, "Daddy, I want to be a farmer," what is going to be your initial response? You know?
That's an interesting question. I'll leave that for next time. But it's an interesting question. It depends, because you know, if I don't know nothing about farming, and then I have a child who just comes there, it depends. You know, it's interesting, but it's a very difficult one to answer, because sometimes if you don't know much about something, it's very difficult for you to get into it, even if it is easy. You know, having said what you've just said, that, you know, it's totally understandable. But how can we change that narrative, though? How can we make sure our parents or our brothers or our children, you know, that when they come with an idea, we don't just have to throw away their idea out there, but we have to listen to them, listen to their idea, and see how we can support for it to become successful.
Yeah. By all means. Both, I think it's about that willingness to embrace the diversity of thought and ability and interest. You know, and for me, I think it's about also the willingness. Most people who want to do farming, they want to do it back home. And when I look at it, I'm thinking, it's easier to farm back home. Why? Because it's not you doing it. You know, you can just pay your way out. Yeah. So you want to do this, you employ people over here. If you are going to do something and do it successfully, at some point you have to do it yourself. Maybe before you can start delegating. So it's about probably the willingness to get our hands dirty, the willingness to get immersed into something without necessarily looking up to somebody to do it for you. For you. And for me, I'm thinking, if you do it yourself and you do it from the heart, it's more likely going to succeed.
And just finally, I know you don't have much time anymore, likewise myself.
Yeah.
What would be your final advice to anyone who is thinking of embarking on what you are doing? Or what would be the tips that you can give to anyone who will be watching or listening to your interview?
I think for me, I can tell you now that the amount of satisfaction I got from doing what I'm doing was something that I could never have achieved doing anything else. I've done many things. I think I can tell your listeners today that I'm a probation officer by trade. I've been practicing for the past 20 years or so in that field. But I've never found so much satisfaction in doing what I was doing, or in doing farming, in terms of realizing the dream or living the dream, what you wanted to do, you know. And then in terms of challenges, they will come in many shapes and forms, and you know, it's about persisting, keep pushing, keep asking the right questions, and you know, until somebody listens to you. And for me, like I said, it was 4 years in the making, and people who come now and look at me, they will just think I was lucky. I wasn't. It was just 4 years of absolute pushing. You know.
Well, Mendford Tapudzai, thank you very much for appearing on our show on African Voices. It was a great pleasure having you. Thank you very much. And to you also, our viewers, that was Mendford Tapudzai, who is a farmer and also the owner of Moyo Fresh Farm Supplies in Sheffield. Until next week, thank you for watching and have a very good night.